Welcome to the Irlandia news summary. A central tenet of Polish foreign policy over the past 3 decades has been the maintenance of the closest possible political alignment with the United States. It led Poland into participation in the international security mission in Afghanistan following 9/11. That involvement this week saw the country caught up in the frantic evacuation efforts from Kabul. It followed the dramatic collapse of the Afghan government after the effective withdrawal of support by the Biden administration. Relations with the US are not, of course, as warm now as they were under the Trump administration, as evidenced by a highly critical statement this week by the State Department over a new Polish property restitution law, as well as over the question of foreign media ownership in Poland. The main news stories over the past week have included: Poland joins in the international evacuation effort from Afghanistan, following the fall of Kabul to the Taliban. The government announces its intention to reform the procedures for disciplining judges, at least partially moving to meet the August 16th European Court of Justice deadline. There is sharp US criticism of a new law labelled by critics as restricting property restitution claims, and Polish paralympians prepare for their Tokyo Games. Last Sunday saw the fall of Kabul to the Taliban, bringing 20 years of involvement in Afghanistan by the international coalition led by the United States to an ignominious end. That coalition, until the withdrawal of the last troops at the end of June, also included Poland. As a result, the government has been involved in the international evacuation efforts from the country, including of Afghans who had assisted Polish forces. In a social media post on Monday, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said that Poland does not leave its allies and friends in need. We are constantly monitoring the situation in Afghanistan. At my command, the first flight to Afghanistan will soon depart, which will be used to evacuate people in need of our care. This operation is being prepared from yesterday. I appeal to all politicians and public figures not to use the dramatic situation in Afghanistan to fuel social emotions. Our priority now is to ensure the security of all those who are associated with Poland in Afghanistan. Some of these activities must, for obvious reasons, remain secret. I am asking for responsibility. Morawiecki said on Tuesday that Poland would help in the evacuation of approximately 100 people from Afghanistan, in response to requests for assistance from the EU, NATO and the International Olympic Committee. He said that, in the coming days, we will be presented with a list of probably around 100 people whom we are going to help evacuate. Polish military aircraft will take evacuees from Kabul to Uzbekistan, and from there to Poland or other European countries. The Prime Minister said that Poland had started to airlift people out of Afghanistan in June, as it was our obligation, adding that 10 families have already arrived in Poland or other places of their choosing, and we have taken care of them. He pointed out that Ghazni province, where the Polish contingent had been stationed, was captured by the Taliban well prior to the fall of Kabul. The Polish government this week moved to defuse its confrontation with the European Union institutions over the deadline of last Monday, August 16th, for the suspension of some of the country's controversial judicial reforms. The announcement followed comments earlier this month by Prawo i Sprawiedliwość chairman Jarosław Kaczyński that we will dissolve the disciplinary chamber as it currently operates, and in this way the subject of the dispute will disappear. Kaczyński still rejected the right of the EU to intervene in such matters. On Tuesday, the government said it would move to dismantle the disciplinary chamber of the Supreme Court as part of a wider judicial reform package. An official statement said that Poland will continue reforms of the judiciary, also in the area of judges' answerability, aimed at improving the efficiency of this system, adding that scrapping the chamber will be part of the reform package. Poland had been threatened with financial penalties if it didn't comply with the European Court of Justice ruling. In a formal response to the European Commission on Monday, Poland said it would submit a motion for the ECJ direction concerning interim measures around the suspension of the work of the disciplinary chamber to be revoked. The moves towards accommodation with the EU will scarcely do much for Prawo i Sprawiedliwości's relations with its largest remaining coalition partner, Solidarna Polska, following last week's exit from the Zjednoczona Prawica of Porozumienie. The final break with Porozumienie came after the dismissal from the government last Tuesday of then Deputy Prime Minister and Development, Labour and Technology Minister Jarosław Gowin. This was followed on Wednesday by the party's exit from the United Right. Last week's developments mean that the Mateusz Morawiecki government is again in a formal minority in the Sejm. However, judging by subsequent events, it still looks to be well capable of winning key votes, with the inclusion of the breakaway Porozumienie group, the Republicans, into Zjednoczona Prawica, as well as the outside support of Kukiz 15 and other smaller groups and independents. Gowin's dismissal followed the earlier firing of a deputy minister from his party over criticism of the Polski Ład. Gowin himself had also been critical of the government's flagship new policy, saying it would impose higher taxes on hard-working Poles. Porozumienie subsequently stated conditions for remaining in government, including amendments to the controversial new foreign media ownership law. However, Prawo i Sprawiedliwość instead dramatically moved to dismiss Gowin. The rollout of the Polski Ład policies has continued, with the government this week approving plans for a new allowance for families with children between 1 and 3 years of age. The measure, to be introduced next year, will apply to all children after the first, with families entitled to receive a total of 12,000 złotych per child. A statement said that around 410,000 children are expected to be covered by the so-called Family Welfare Capital Programme. The US this week joined in international criticism of President Duda's signing into law last Saturday of a bill to place a time limit on challenges to administrative decisions. The law is seen by the government as an attempt to end, often unfounded, challenges to property rights, but critics claim it makes it more difficult for victims, including Jewish victims, to gain restitution for property lost under the Nazi German occupation and afterwards. After signing the bill, President Duda wrote that it would end an era of legal chaos, reprivatisation mafias, uncertainty for millions of Poles, and lack of respect for the elementary rights of the citizens of our country. The State Department statement did welcome remarks by President Duda at the weekend, which was seen as a response to criticism of a new foreign media ownership bill, which was passed by the Sejm on a 228 to 216 vote last Wednesday, following a heated debate. It aims to prevent major media firms from being majority owned from outside the European Economic Area. The bill has provoked public protests and is seen by critics as primarily targeting the US Discovery Corporation owned TVN24. The statement said that, quote, "The United States reiterates our concerns about amendments to the Code of Administrative Procedure, which President Duda signed on August 14th, severely restricting restitution and compensation for property wrongfully confiscated during Poland's communist era. We deeply regret the adoption of these amendments. Further, we urge the Polish government to consult with representatives of affected parties and to develop a clear, efficient and effective legal procedure to resolve confiscated property claims and provide some measure of justice for victims. In the absence of such a procedure, this legislation will harm all Polish citizens whose property was unjustly taken, including that of Polish Jews who were victims of the Holocaust." We welcome President Duda's statement this weekend in support of freedom of expression, the sanctity of contracts, and the shared values that underpin our relationship. We strongly urge him to act on these values in regard to pending legislation that, if passed in the current form, could severely affect media freedom and the foreign investment climate. We look forward to working with the Government of Poland to advance our shared priorities on the basis of democratic values, including respect for the fundamental freedom of expression. Israel moved to downgrade the level of mutual diplomatic representation with Poland in response to the new law. Earlier this month, the Biden administration named Mark Brzezinski as the new US ambassador to Poland. He's the son of the late Zbigniew Brzezinski, who served as the National Security Advisor in the Carter administration from 1977 to 1981. Poland's economy is continuing to rebound rapidly. In a flash estimate last Friday, Główny Urząd Statystyczny, GUS, or Statistics Poland, said that GDP rose by 10.9% in the second quarter of the year, compared to the lockdown-hit second quarter of 2020. It was the highest year-on-year GDP growth rate on record. There was a 0.9% contraction in the first quarter of the year and a 2.7% contraction in 2020 as a whole. In a final estimate for inflation, GUS said that the July annual figure stood at 5%, in line with the earlier flash estimate. Poland's Paralympians are gearing up for the Paralympic Games, which commence in Tokyo next Tuesday. They'll be hoping for as successful a campaign as Team Poland had in the Tokyo Olympics. The team came away with a record haul of 14 medals, 4 gold, 5 silver and 5 bronze. It was Poland's best Olympics performance this century and placed the country 17th in the overall medals table. 89 Polish Paralympians, 56 men and 33 women will compete in 12 sports at the Games. President Duda attended a send-off ceremony for them in Warszawa on Monday and tweeted that, "We believe that these games will be a great success for you. We wish it with all our hearts." That's all for this week.